When they got to the apartment, he tied him up and placed a plastic bag over his head, watching him suffocate to death. He then placed 2 teddy bears in a 69 position on his dead body. This video contains themes of abuse, violence, and homophobia. Some viewers may find this disturbing. Viewers' discretion is advised. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Omodele Salu, and if you're here, that means you're invested in true crime content as much as I am. So welcome, take a seat. I'm going to be posting a lot of contents like this, so if this is something that you like, please like, subscribe, and turn that notification bell on so you can get notified when I post a new video. Now that all that is out of the way, let's get right into today's case. In the year 1954, in Dartford, Kent, England, Colin Ireland was born on the 16th of March to an unmarried teenage couple. Not long after he was born, his father walked out on him and his then 17-year-old mother. Being a teen mom was not easy on Colin's mother. They had to live from hand to mouth, and they also had to move from place to place trying to survive. In the early 1960s, Colin's mother got married, and when she got pregnant, she sent Colin away for a little while. While Colin was away, he did not have it any easier. He was propositioned by older men on 3 different occasions, and he was also spied on by men who were pedophiles. When he finally returned home to his mother, he started to get involved in petty crimes. In his mid-teens, he was sent to Boston for theft, and while he was there, he deliberately set fire to another resident's belongings. At the age of 17, he was convicted of robbery. He escaped but was caught and sent back to Boston. Colin was struggling to make ends meet, so he took up a series of manual jobs, but it was not long before he fell right back into his criminal ways, and in December of 1975, he was convicted of car theft, criminal damage, and 2 burglaries. For his crimes, he was sentenced to 18 months in prison. It was released in November of 1976, and he soon began a relationship with a woman and her children, but this only lasted for a few months because in 1977, he was convicted of extortion and was sentenced to 18 months in prison again. In 1980, he was convicted of robbery and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. In 1981, he was convicted of attempted deception. After being in and out of jail so many times, in 1982, Colin finally decided it was time to grow up and settle down. So he married Virginia Zamit and they had a baby girl together. But this did not last long because in 1985, he was sentenced to 6 months for going equipped to cheat. 2 years after that, his marriage to Virginia ended. In 1989, he met and married Janet Young, who already had kids. He was violent towards her and stole from her. He treated her really badly, and in the early 1990s, they were separated. Sadly, this left Janet and her children homeless. After his relationship with Janet Young ended, he moved to Southend-on-Sea, where he too became homeless and started to live in a hostel. But soon he was able to earn a livable wage, I guess, and rent a flat. And now he's okay. He has a roof above his head, over his head. And he's saying, okay, I need to have some fun, right? I need to have some fun. And instead of him to get a hobby or something, decided, okay, let me target innocent people. And in the 1990s, who better to target than people with little to no rights? One night, Colin traveled to Coleherne Arms, a gay pub in London. There, he met a man named Peter Walker. Peter was a 45-year-old choreographer. He took a liking to Colin and invited him back to his apartment. When they got to the apartment, Colin tied Peter up and placed a plastic bag over his head, watching him suffocate to death. He then placed 2 teddy bears in a 69 position on Peter's dead body. The day after the murder, Colin was glued to the news channels. He waited and nothing. He got so pissed that these news channels were not covering his crimes. Instead, they were covering some basic, regular, probably weather stuff. Anyway, he got so pissed that he called the Sun newspaper and the Samaritans. And he told the journalists, he advised them not to, he advised the journalists about the dogs. Apparently, he had locked Peter's dogs in another room and he was worried about them. He told the journalists that he had killed their owner and also that he wanted to become a famous serial killer. Not long after he had murdered Peter, he met another man by the name of Christopher Dunn. Christopher was a 37-year-old Liberian who lived in Wilston. His body was found naked in a harness, and initially, his death was believed to be an accident that occurred during an erotic game. And because he lived in a different area from Peter Walker, a different set of investigators worked on his case, and his death was not immediately linked to Peter's. Soon, Colin found his next and third victim, Perry Bradley III. Perry was a 35-year-old businessman who frequented the Colhen pub. He lived in Kensington and was the son of Texas Democratic Party fundraiser Perry Bradley Jr. The two men went back to Perry's apartment where Colin suggested that he tie Perry up, and Perry refused this because he was like, "Why do you need to tie me up?" And Colin said that he needed some elements of bondage to be able to perform sexually. Okay, Colin Gray. Perry cooperated, and soon he was tied up in his own bed, face down with a noose around his neck. Once Colin had gotten him in this position, his whole demeanor changed. He became mean to Perry and started to threaten him. He demanded that Perry give him his money and pin, or else he would torture him. He said he was just a thief, and after he was done robbing him, he would leave his apartment and let him be. This gave Perry some hope, so he gave Colin what he wanted, but Colin had lied. Even though he had thought about letting Perry go for a brief moment, he knew he could not let someone who could identify him to the police just leave. So when Perry dozed off, Colin tightened the noose he had placed around his neck earlier and strangled him to death. He then placed a doll on Perry's dead body. At this time, Colin had killed 3 men, but the media coverage he was receiving was little to none, and this infuriated him. He wanted the press to talk more about his crimes. He wanted people to talk about him. He wanted the police to fall over themselves trying to catch him. He wanted to be feared. He wanted to be iconic. Not up to 3 days after he had killed Perry, he set out to strike again. He met and courted 33-year-old Andrew Collier, a housing warden. They both went back to Andrew's flat one night. After entering the flat, there was a disturbance outside, and both men went to the window to check what was going on. They found out it was nothing really, and Colin got to work. He tied Andrew up on his bed and demanded his bank details, but Andrew refused to give it to him, and this made Colin so angry that he killed Andrew's cat. And Andrew was just watching this in horror. He then placed a rope around Andrew's neck and started to tighten his grip. When he was sure Andrew was dead, he loosened his grip, then put a condom on Andrew's penis and put it in the cat's mouth. He then took the cat's tail and stuffed it in Andrew's mouth, creating sort of like a 69 position. Colin then searched Andrew's house looking for his bank details. He didn't find it, but he found some cash and Andrew's HIV positive test result. He then called the police to ask them why they had not connected the 4 murders just yet. Good question, police. Why haven't you? Now, the whole situation surrounding Andrew's death was different. Unlike with Peter's murder, where he was worried about the dog since he had locked them in, Andrew's was different. He almost seemed to be angry at the cat. A lot of people speculated that this was because of what happened with Peter's dogs, and the press started calling him an animal lover. And this was to prove to people that he wasn't one. Remember, he wanted to be feared. He wanted to be a famous serial killer. What famous serial killer adores animals? I'm sure that there are, but I'm guessing that there are very few and probably not as famous. Emmanuel Spiteri was a 41-year-old chef. He met Colin at the Colhen pub and they both clicked and went back to Emmanuel's apartment. Colin persuaded Emmanuel to be cuffed and tied to his bed. Emmanuel agreed, and again, once he was in this position, Colin's whole demeanor changed. He demanded for his pin and bank details, but Emmanuel refused to give it to him. He then used a noose to kill him. He set fire to the flat and left. He called the police later to tell them to look for a body at the scene of a fire and added that he will probably not be killing again. Now, investigations were ongoing, but it was taking forever for the police to solve this case, and people started to suspect that it was homophobia on the part of the authorities. Finally, the authorities were able to connect Colin to 2 of the murders, that of Andrew Collier and Emmanuel Spiteri. Now, with Andrew's case, remember when there was like a commotion in his flat, like outside, and they both went to the window to see what was going on. Colin grabbed the window, we call it protector in Nigeria, sorry, the window bar, and he forgot to wipe his fingerprints of this particular spot, and so they were able to link him to that crime scene. And as for Emmanuel Spiteri, they saw Emmanuel leaving the pub, the pub with Colin. So that connected Colin to like 2 murders. Colin Ireland was charged with the murders of Andrew Collier and Emmanuel Spiteri, and he confessed to the other 3 while awaiting trial in prison. He told the police that he had no beef against gay men, but he picked on them because they were the easy targets. He also said that he wasn't gay, he just pretended to be one in order to lure his victims in. On the 20th of December 1993, Colin pleaded guilty to all charges and was given a life sentence for each. The judge said that Colin was exceptionally frightening and dangerous, adding that to take 1 life is an outrage, but to take 5 is carnage. And that brings us to the end of today's case. Thank you for making it to the end. You all please like and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you for the next one.